Here we go. Business not as usual podcast. Vince and Mike coming at ya.
Heyo.
Hey, Mike. What's going on?
I'm doing well, Vince. What's going on with you?
You know, just stuff. Just things. You know,
Are you?
it is a crazy time in history.
Yes, it is.
We are, as we record this, we're in the midst of an ongoing counting of election ballots to our neighbors to the south.
Counting seems to be very hard.
It's very, well, I mean, you got to get it right. I understand, but yeah. So it's been a very down day. Just hey, it happens, right? What are you gonna do? But I don't want to let this day dictate how I close out the year, because to me this is a blip. It's a data point, but I know that by tomorrow I'll probably be okay. And that got me thinking, isn't that very similar to how a lot of organizations close out project work, transformation work, but just work in general, as they start coasting into the end of the year?
Yes, and I was going to talk to you about that, at the time when we're going to publish this, will probably be maybe like a month and a half to the end of the year. Yeah. People start winding her down, start kind of like, we're coming close to the end of the year. There's like lots of social things. I don't know what we're going to be doing this year, but maybe online. But people start kind of taking their foot off the gas. And I think as we head into, there is a winter break of sorts.
Of course.
I think as you head into that winter break, I think you don't take the foot off the brake, both individually, like as a professionally, but also as a project team or as a program.
Right.
I think you need to keep pushing through till the end of the year and set yourself up for the following year. Because if you start taking a month and a half off now, that lag is then going to continue into January, and now you've lost on your own
first quarter.
Like 2 months. Yeah.
And I mean, it's natural to, as you enter into this holiday season, it's natural to want to slow down. You're probably not going to be starting new things, and I think that's fair. But you can use this period, and I'll speak to, as we have the conversation, I'll speak to some of my plans personally for December. But you lose momentum if you just like put your feet up and okay, I've hit all my goals for the year. I'm done. Yeah. My review next year is going to be tremendous. Like what more do I need to do in this calendar year? And I think you're missing an opportunity. And as you've alluded to, Mike, it's both a personal opportunity as well as a professional and project based opportunity, because there's a big difference between taking your foot off the gas and putting your foot on the brake. There's a huge difference between those two things.
So I think individually, as people start taking their foot off the gas, I think it's a great time for you to on social media or like this podcast, some of the noise is reduced. And if you can continue to pump out blog posts, or like us, we're going to continue recording podcasts. It's a good time to break, as there's some noise out of the system. I mean, there's your voice that could get to a new audience member. You double down on some content going out the door, figuratively, and you could get like new audience, new people looking at your blog. It's so to me, it's a good time to kind of ramp up a bit before everyone really shuts down, but not shutting her down like a month and a half early.
Well, and it's been a while since I've been on the Gary V train, and you and I both sort of agree
Yes.
on Gary. But there's a thing that he used to say, and he probably still says, which is, and by the way, it's not that, for those that are listening, it's not that there's a hate or like whatever. I decided that I had learned enough that it was time to go do, and not just keep consuming content, but. It was about, you're one piece of content away from something that you want or that you desire. You're one blog post, one meme, one Instagram, pic. Like, we're one thing away from being known. And, and I agree with you, Mike. There is a lot less noise in toward the end of the year because people are starting to relax. And so that could be the crack in the door, that opening of the door that you need to really bust through. And I think that's an important point, right? Like, don't stop. Yes, we are going to continue recording these podcasts because, I mean, I don't know about you, man. It's just fun. Like, this is one of the things I look forward to each week. And so, yeah, we're not going to stop, but it's how are we then going to leverage that to reach new people? Because that is how you are going to grow, professionally and personally. And I think that same principle will apply in the project work and the transformation work. Like, you're one meeting away from breaking down a barrier. You're one conversation away from re-engaging a stakeholder. And so, don't miss those opportunities because, well, it's the middle of December and what's the point?
Yeah. And, we spoke at BBC in what was it now?
Late October. It was
late October.
Yeah,
it's all a blur. But and when we're talking about Project World, and we talked about the missing pieces of transformation, it was all around people and change and your customers. And if in terms of the Project World, that is a good time to keep your people engaged before everyone goes off and get ready for the following year. And if things start to slow down a bit in the project, that's a good time to have people rejuvenate. Like, maybe instead of not doing anything, you pick up a training session, or you have you revisit something that wasn't working before, or you meet with some customers. So there's things that you need to keep pushing for. And I think what we're talking about today is constantly keeping your foot on the gas for that, because we had great conversations coming out of BBC and even on our social. And so as each thing starts to happen, you just get more conversation going. I think that's what's important in these last few weeks of the year.
Yeah. So historically, Mike, what are some of the things that you've done to close out the year strong?
So one is, and I do it 2 times a year. I do it in the summer, in the dog days of summer, and I do it now is when we were all, when we were allowed to see each other.
Yeah.
That was a good time to mix a little business with pleasure and take your team out for maybe like a lunch or dinner, and then actually talk about what the plans are for the following year. Like, what are the things we should tackle? And I remember doing that a lot once in over the summer, and we actually changed our whole business model to a completely different business model and had great success. So that kind of, we're not in the office. People have different ways of thinking. You have some food, you have some fun, and then at the same time, replan or think of a better plan. So to me, that's one way of keeping the foot on the gas, but maybe in a different way as we're in this holiday season, as we start to go to the holidays. So that's one. The other one is I actually keep putting out more content. So keep putting out more blog posts. I actually doubled down on LinkedIn content. This is from a professional perspective.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep hammering at these podcasts because I think again, I think you should double down on these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I take a pretty similar approach. I will, but I only do it once a year, and I'm speaking for myself at this point. So not professionally. Well, me professionally, but not professionally. So, towards the end of the year, and I think it's going to be a little bit more of an extended thing this year, just because I think time will afford it with other responsibilities sort of starting to wind down toward the middle of December, expected at least. But I like to do sort of a retrospective, prospective session where I look back at the year. And every year I set a number of goals. I will set a couple of, I don't want to call them attainable goals, but things that's like, I expect to do this. But then I like to set my stretch goal. And that is there's one like massive goal to get. And so I will spend, a couple days thinking about, okay, what did I do this year? What went well? What didn't I get done? And then, what do I need to change? What do I need to, how do I need to not let these things happen or continue to allow these things happen? And then I start to think about the next year. And I've already started having conversations with people around 2021, which is weird because, we're in November. And a lot of this stuff started in like August, where I started having conversations with people like, hey, we should do this. We should try this. And so, I will set goals for the year, and then I try to sequence them just like you would, a project plan. I try to sequence things. So, last year, for example, I set the goal of publishing a book. I actually set the goal of publishing 4 books, 1 a quarter. And I mean, looking back, that was ridiculous, but I got 1 done and I wrote 2 others. I just haven't done anything with them. That work probably would not have gotten done if I didn't set that big goal. Right?
Absolutely.
And so, that's one thing. For this year, I am going to fall short of my big goal, which means I'm either going to carry it forward and have 2 next year, or I'm going to have to reevaluate. But I've already been having conversations about 2021 because as we enter into this new way of working, this new world, I think there's a lot of opportunity to insert yourself in as a thought leader in your space. And so I will do that, retrospective, prospective, to set goals, and then it just becomes a cycle. And I don't tend to revisit them through the year, I guess the way that you do. But I am aware of them constantly, and it becomes almost like there is a need to deliver, to ship, right?
So, I do 2 times a year just because, but I think you have a good point about, so it takes a long time for things to come to fruition. So I think having those conversations now for next year with people, with projects, to have those now and then get all these things out there that you want to do. And then the ones that just fall, the balls that fall is cool because you've done all these other things. But I think this is, again, if you're just sitting around doing nothing for the next month, you're not going to get that. I think you and I had a goal to speak 2 times, and then I had a goal to speak another time. So we've done the 2. I didn't get picked for the 3rd one, which is supposed to be this week. But if we didn't set that goal, we wouldn't have had 2. So that's 2 more than I would have if we just sat around last November. So
exactly.
And I think if you just pick a goal that you can get, that's not really big enough goal. So, 4, you got 1 out and you have 2 on the go. I think that's actually a really good goal that you set. because now you have futures. And I think it's always important to have futures always going, because when something falls short, you don't get devastated. Like,
no,
oh, well, that fell short. But if you only have one thing going and it doesn't hit, then you're devastated, because that's the only thing you got going on.
Right.
So it's important to, in this month, figure out next year. And one thing is, since we're not traveling, speaking, and if you want to do that, there's no better time than now to do it, right? Because you're not going anywhere. Like, you could take your lunch, do a talk, and then go back to work. Like, you're not in Vegas. So if you want to speak, and you have the benefit of having notes in front of you, you don't have to go off, you don't have to memorize everything. So this is a really good time.
Don't give away the secret, man. Don't give away the secret.
I'm just saying, this is a really good time to get your feet wet, because you're not going anywhere. You're not taking time off work that you don't have to, but it's also a way to get into the groove. And then you get to the point where you're like Vince, who can just go, just goes, baby. So I think it's a good time to think of those things.
And I mean, I posted something online on LinkedIn last week, but I actually, what you just described, I was able to do last Friday. So I started the day, I did a workshop in Toronto to a distributed global student group. And that finished around 3 p.m. Eastern. Hopped a quick flight, and I spoke at a conference in Honolulu at 3:30 Eastern, which was 9:30 Hawaiian time. And so, that's something I would not have been able to do if I was required to travel. Exactly. Like, it's just, I would not have been able to do it. And so you're right. It's given us this opportunity to, and looking back, there were a bunch of events that I said no to because I didn't want to travel.
Right.
And I wish I hadn't, because, I could have done it. I could have been even more international this year. But like, I've had the opportunity this year to speak, across Canada, across the US. I did an event in Egypt earlier in the year. And like, I mean, I've never it's one of the countries that's on my bucket list, because the pyramids and just, but like I had a chance to do that, and that is amazing how small the world has become as a result of having to be at home. Now, that being said, I still do kind of miss the travel aspect, and
nothing misses going to Egypt, actually being there. But
right.
So I'm just saying, the sheer volume of things you could do now, because you don't have to take a bunch of time beforehand to travel. Then the day that you're there, or the conference is 2 days. Like, you now have this real chance to continue working, not lose time from work, then talk and have people start following you and think of your thought leadership, and you're in 2 places in one day. I think it'll always be like that now, but there will be a chance, when they open up, where you pick and choose when you're going to attend live. Yeah. But I think if anybody's looking to be able to do like a webinar, this is a perfect time to do it, because everyone's looking for it.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that stops you is you. Like,
there's no excuse now. You're not traveling. There's not going. It's you're not taking a whole bunch of time off work, because you could do it during your lunch, because it's only an hour. So I think unless you're doing like a 3-hour talk, but outside of that, you're good. And I think another good thing to double down on this year is podcasts. I've been on a bunch of other people's podcasts.
Yes, you have.
And it takes no time at all, but the reach you get is great. And so if anybody asks you to be on a podcast, don't say no.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like we said earlier, right? You're one thing away, you're one podcast away, you're one interview away. Like, you cannot say no. And I see a lot of people that are waiting for this perfect opportunity. And by the way, we will tie this back into transformation and all that, like real work. but like maybe we will.
Maybe. I don't know.
But
I like this
there-
conversation right now.
This is good, right? And this is different, right? Because this is also very
It's
real.
not as usual. Listen, we
It's
don't
not
wanna
as
talk
usual.
about- no,
That's
hey.
fair. But there's, you talk to people and it's like they're waiting. Oh, I'm not ready to be a keynote. Oh, I'm not ready
Yeah.
to.
I'm not ready to be on a podcast.
I'm not ready
Yes,
to be
you
on a
are.
podcast.
If someone asks you to be on a podcast, then you're ready. Because the fact that they're not asking like some Yahoo, like
yeah,
we're not going to invite someone on this podcast who's gonna like we're gonna pull teeth to get information out of them. So if
Yeah.
someone is asking you, then they see that you'll be a great guest or a good guest. So it's just the first one leads to the second one.
yeah.
And again, this does tie back to not taking your foot off the gas. This is a good time to do it. While everybody else is like sitting around, it's a good way for you to slip in on doing these extra things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's another piece that I will say is you really have to think about what it is that you want. Like, so as much as we advocate for, do a podcast or start your own podcast or whatever,
Right.
like you have to actually want to do it because
Yes.
it's really easy to do 5 and then they just go away because it's like this is hard work. Like I out of the pandemic I started a web show called Analysts After Work. After the first couple episodes I was tired. Now I was doing it every week and I scaled it back, but it was like, oh, I'm tired. And it wasn't until somebody came up to me and sent me a note on LinkedIn and said like, hey, when are the new episodes? When are you back? Like I took like a 4-week break. I'd had enough. And like, when are you coming back? When's the show back? Oh, okay. I guess I'll bring it back. And like, I'm glad I did because I got into a better cadence. And I guess what I'm saying is it's easy to start something. It's not easy to keep it going. And I think that's, with this podcast, we're up to like episode 35 or something like that. Like that's a lot of content that we're going to have to do something with, Mike, wink, from a repurposing perspective.
Absolutely.
But, it's really easy to get excited at the beginning. So don't, I guess what I'm saying is when you do decide you're going to start something, like actually start one thing, get that to a good place, and then you can start the next thing. So figure out that sequence and don't like, okay, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a web show. I'm going to write a blog every week and I'm going to post 10 times a day to Instagram. And I'm going to like, it's a lot. It's a lot. So do one thing.
Yes.
Do one thing.
And the one thing that you like, because I always have these, I'm going to write a blog. And then I start writing, I'm like, I don't want to write a blog.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's not, I'm a half decent writer, but doing podcasts are way easy. I enjoy them way more. And I get way more content out that way. So I'm like, why am I banging my head trying to write a blog post? Because I sit there and then I get my phone and I'm like, that's not working. So writing is not really what you want to do. So don't do it. Like pick the thing that you want to do. It could be Instagram posts where you do those pictures, like it could like those infographics. It could be anything, but just and this is a good time to start doing it.
Yeah, I somebody asked me last week, like, how do you have the time to do the web show and your podcast and all the other stuff? And I was like, the web show is fun. Like it's me hanging out with some friends, having a drink, like, and we're just chatting. Like I'm just booking. I just booked someone for the episode tomorrow because I've been very lax in booking guests.
In booking people, you need a booker. Is what you need.
I need an assistant. and so but they're like, how do you how like what is it? Why do you do it? Like it's how do you do the show and the podcast? And it's like, but the show is fun. It's just hanging out, having drinks and talking. The podcast is fun because like we get a chance to chat and talk about stuff that we're both kind of good at and now recognized as thought leaders. in our respective by
Yeah.
Thinkers
Yes.
360. So like it's a way of creating content that doesn't feel like work, and that
Which is
is
important, because then you won't
super
do it,
important.
or else you
Exactly.
won't do it, because it
Exactly.
just becomes. And so when people say, how do you do it, if it feels like work, you won't do it.
No.
You'll be dragging your feet. I don't want to do that. And so you do these extra things, or the things that you enjoy, because then it doesn't feel like it's a lot of work.
Yeah. And then, you want to write something cool, but
Yeah.
figure out how to make that happen. So one thing that you and I have been experimenting with is taking audio and having it transcribed,
Right.
and then turning that into, a blog post or a tweet or something, like, because it's easy for us to speak our thoughts and then edit it to make it, coherent from a written perspective, because you miss out on the ums and the ahs and the ers that that we use here.
And the 700 times I say right. So
Right,
once I take
yeah.
out right 14 times, you have somewhat of the sort of a blog post.
Yeah. But I mean, it's about figuring out how to do it. And again,
Right.
let's tie this back to,
Just did it
transformational work. I got to do it, right? You've got things that you need to get done
Mhm.
on your work. Make it as painless as possible. Like, don't don't force your team to complete a weekly status report if you don't use it and everybody hates it.
Right.
So, like, figure out where are those opportunities for you to, engage people, get what you need to make decisions and drive forward, but also doesn't impose pain on the people that have to do that work. Because if they don't have to, or they have an opportunity to not, they will figure out how to not do it.
But as you said at the beginning of this, how you evaluate what you've done and then think about the future. This is a good time to evaluate all the things you've collected in the program that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you go along, you pick up this. Oh, we need this status report. We do this report, or we do this task. It's a good time to get all those and go, these came up throughout the year. Do we still need them? Can we
Right.
combine them? And so again, instead of just not doing anything, get ready for next year, right?
Yes.
Get rid of things that you're not going to use, combine things, maybe make something new to start the year.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, when it comes to the work, you've cleared some paths when you come back out of the winter break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at the same time, I think we're advocating for don't take your foot off the gas. But I think there's also, let's apply the mental health aspect to it, which is, if you think you need to take your foot off the gas, or you do need to pump the brake for whatever reason, I would say do it. Like, if you really are if your heart is not in it and you just can't, you need a break, you need to decompress, you need to disconnect, then do that. Like, for me, that is, I am at this point used to my planning cycle, so I look forward to it. It doesn't, just like this, it doesn't feel like work to me, because it's an opportunity to look back. But not everybody's in that boat, and so if you do need, to cut,
right,
then do that. You should you should do that. And the only person who's going to know that is you, right? Yep. Because you know yourself the best, or I mean the immediate people around you. So,
and if you're a leader in a transformational program, if you see your team, you've been driving hard in normal times, but driving hard through COVID, mm-hmm. maybe, and you see that the team is done, then this is also a time for you to kind of slow that down, maybe give them other things to do to rejuvenate them,
right? Maybe
replan for January. But these are the things that you do around this time, instead of just kind of going into the total social mode.
Right.
And I think that's the message we want to talk about today.
It is the social has never been as important as it is now. You'll have to be creative in how you do that. I was talking to somebody the other day that said that they're planning their annual Kris Kringle exchange. I don't know how you're going to do that.
Yes.
Short of like e-gift cards, I don't know how you're going to do that. But you know what? Like if you can figure it out, cool.
Yeah.
You know, the social aspect, the team aspect is still critical. I mean, it's probably more critical now because we have been distributed for, 8 months.
So
at this
long.
point.
Yeah.
Right. So continue to do that. It is really important. But continue to do the things that are going to make you happy. Because you are going to close, the way that you close the year is the way that you're going to start it. And if you close the year happy, you're going to go into 2021 ready to kick some ass. And I think that is a super exciting prospect, especially given how difficult this year has been on a lot of people.
Yeah. Agreed.
I actually think that's a pretty good place to stop rather. But also start.
I would like to hear what people are thoughts. Like, what do you do as you end the year, and what are your thoughts about where you're at in COVID? Do you need to slow down, or can you pick some things up to end the year, and then take a little bit of winter break off, and then pick up strong in January?
Yeah. And what are some of your goals for 2021? Yeah. I'm curious for that because you share first, and then I'll share as well. I've got some really cool ideas for 2021, and I'm really excited about the year. And not just because everyone 2020 sucked. No, I mean it was what it was. But there's a lot of cool things that I've got in mind for next year, so I'm really excited for the year. With that though, I'm going to echo Mike's statement. We want to hear from you. Let us know what you think. You can hit us up at michaelmartino.ca, the digital consigliere himself, or you can get me at vincentmirabelli.com. But for Mike, I'm Vince, and this has been the Business Not As Usual podcast. We'll see you in the next one.
See ya.